All right, so hello guys, this is Francesca from the Educator's Room. Today we have Christopher, is it Emdin? Am I saying it correctly?
You got it right, and it
Okay,
is.
I got it right. He's the author of the highly acclaimed book entitled For White Folks Who Teach in the Hood, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I got it right. So I don't have my paper in front of me, but I'm pretty good with work. Okay, so I got the book probably in the early part of the week, and I'd heard about the book about a week or two ago that it was going to come out. And then at the CORE conference, I saw some tweets about it, and it piqued my curiosity. So we have the privilege today of interviewing him and kind of him telling us not only what the book is about, but why it needs to be in urban schools across America. So Chris, can you take a second and give us your background in education?
Sure, man. But before we even did that, I just want to again say to everybody who's watching or listening how thankful I am to be here, honored to be in your presence, to share some words of your community. I follow you guys and the entire community so much and love what you're doing. So salute to you guys. So, and then part of me being in my sweatshirt at my home, just chilling today, but this is so important to be able to share some words with you. And so, yeah, I'm Chris Emdin. My job is professor of science education at Teachers College at Columbia University. But my job by no means describes all I do and what I've done in education. So I am currently a co-teacher. I am in schools weekly, co-teaching classes. I have been a researcher in urban schools for the last 12 to 14 years. Former New York City public school teacher. I taught middle school math and science. I taught high school physics and chemistry. I spent a year in administration. Salute to all the administrators before making my foray into higher ed and then conducting research specifically in urban classrooms. And I'm also a STEM educator in many ways. So I'm actually an anthropobiochemist by training before I made my foray into science education and then some thinking about urban education writ large.
Okay, wow. You have a really intensive background. Now, okay, so before we start, I know schools across America are heading towards STEM.
Yeah.
So you have this very involved background on STEM education. What even propelled you to go into the classroom? Or, before we even do that, when you went into the classroom, what was the number one need that you saw our students needed?
Man, it really wasn't even anything that just like jumped at me. It was just me being like recognized and really, oh man, I saw a little man on the side. Hi, sorry. It really was born out of me. Look, I'm in these classrooms, man. I'm a person of color. I'm going back to teach in my hood in many ways. And I'm realizing that the kids aren't responding to me. And I'm like, but I'm from here. You guys should respond to me. I'm a man of color in urban neighborhoods. And I started thinking about like, why were they not responding to me? And then when I started thinking about that, I started realizing that I was enacting all these things as a teacher that when I was a kid, I hated. And it was tough to come to grips with that, but it's like everything, all the training I received to be an effective urban educator was completely ineffective for me. And it wasn't until I started to strip away all those things about what people told me to do that I started having some results with young people. And so that is like the biggest thing. The biggest challenge to urban education is educators who are well-intended, heart in the right place, soul in the right place, spirit in the right place, and have no idea about what to do to be effective. And then everybody who's telling you what to do ain't been in the places that you've been or are just speculating on how to be effective. And then you go in there and you try to do what they tell you to do, and then the kids don't like you, and you're like, but I care about you, but I love you. And then before long, what happens is you start blaming them because you're like, I care, so why am I not effective? When in reality is because we got the wrong model about how to do this thing right. And so like really that's the onus for all this work. Seeing that same cycle I just described over and over and over again, people quitting who love kids and then ending up hating kids. And and it's like something had to give. And so that's why I wrote the book.
And that's so funny because I think back to my first day teaching in Memphis City schools. I had just left college. I got a job, and I remember getting the book, the textbook, and my principal saying, here you go teach. Yeah. And I was like, okay, this is, I look like them, it's gonna go well. Nah, it went all the way left.
Right.
And it made me examine how I talked to them, how I spoke to them, the things I asked them to do, just my whole overall mindset when I went in.
Yep.
I wasn't there to save them. I wasn't there to miraculously do, but I just had to check myself. So I understand what you're saying, because I mean, in urban education, we're just seeing people are leaving after a year, 2 years. They're doing 6 months and they're gone. And or
the wrong people are staying. I mean, that's another piece of this too. You know, well-intended people are getting burnt out and leaving, and then folks who should not be in there are staying, and they're staying and enacting these approaches to teaching and learning that are doing damage to young people. And I'm so glad that like we're having this exchange as two people of color, because you know, people that critique my book and my title saying, well, you know, you just don't like white teachers, and I'm like, no, I actually think that white teachers need to be in the hood and teaching in these schools, because if we didn't have them, there'll be a critical mass that we need to fill for teachers. So it's not an anti-white book, but it's to say, and let's be honest, look, if I'm from the Bronx and I went to teach in middle schools in the Bronx, and I went through those schools myself, and I had to realize that I was trained wrong and I had different perceptions of young people from a person who's in that neighborhood. What if you are a white person from a socioeconomically advantaged place, from a different background, different ethnicity, learn different things about those kids? I'm telling you that if I had a hard time, I had to check myself and learn the game, you damn sure have to. And somebody has to say, listen, guys, there is a gap here. And if we really want to do right by these young people, let's confront it. But not only just problematize it. And this is what I tried to do in the book, like problematize it, talk about it historically, and then say, okay, now how do we move forward? Like, what can you do tomorrow? What's best practice that we've heard that someone has told you to ignore that you have to incorporate into your practice? So it's a philosophical work in many ways. It's a sociological work in many ways. But I'm not one of those dudes. It's also like when you get into school tomorrow, here's some things you're doing.
Yes, and that's what I liked about it, because it had that anecdotal where it wasn't a bunch of research, and that bothers me about if I'm going to go teach tomorrow in Memphis City schools, I don't need a bunch of research. I need to know when these kids hit the door, what I can do to make my kids do the work I want them to do, and also for them not to fight when they come in my room. So I like that about your book. And if you guys haven't received it, I'm going to put it in the show notes. You guys need to order this book. And I don't say that about many education books, but I like that number one, it talked about the elephant in the room. And number two, it wasn't from a perspective of we don't need white teachers, but if I'm struggling and I look like these kids and I come from where they're from, you damn sure, like you said, everybody else who's going to look differently, they're going to need some help. And it's not to say you're not a professional. It's just to say we're in different times. So with that being said, you write the book, and before the interview, I went and I looked at some of the Amazon reviews, and you know, race is such a hotbed topic.
Yeah.
You wrote an article, one of our writers, he actually teaches in New York City schools. He wrote an article about Sandra Bland, and he likened the officer that arrested Sandra Bland to white educators in his school. Okay. So it said, white educators, do you see yourself in Officer Encina, however you say his last name? When I tell you, you would have thought the second coming of Jesus was, I mean, it was like, people were just, it's racist. And I'm like, he's white. He's white. The guy who wrote it is white.
Right.
But I mean, just getting over the title, talk to us about how you even thought to name the book that. Yeah. And you know, how do you get past people who are going to say, it's racist, it's racist? You know, that's what we say today. We don't want to confront issues.
You talk about racist. You know, look, I very well understood that somebody was going to get upset by the title just because of the title. I also got that some people were going to read the work with a certain scrutiny that wouldn't let them fully accept all I was doing because of the title. But I also titled it what it was because it's necessary. And that is a target population. And so the title of the book is for white folks who teach in the hood, and the rest of y'all too. So the rest of y'all too gonna get it also. These are black and brown folks with white supremacist ideologies in classrooms who believe in zero tolerance policies, and maybe people of color who instill the same type of practices. They need to get that work as well. Then we also gonna talk about these white folks who are in these spaces, and they need to get the work as well. So for me, it was like, how do I capture the audience? I need to get this. How do I be unapologetic about it? And how do I be deliberate about things that we gloss over? Like this idea of naming urban communities the hood was also a political statement to say that, right? Because, you know, we'll name a place as urban, but you're talking about, you know, 42nd Street or the newly gentrified area. That's urban, but that's not the hood. So let's be upfront about the hood. The hood is a places where socioeconomically disadvantaged populations stay. It's a place where crime is high. Oftentimes graduation rates are low. It's not blaming those communities for the fact that those things exist, but it's a reality that we all perceive those spaces as very unique spaces. So let's say if you go on there, right? And then also listen, white folks is white folks. Like, I've reached a point in my career and in my work and my research that I realized that political correctness will get me nowhere because the stakes are too high for the young people who I want to move forward. So when I say for white folks, it is for white folks who are in those spaces. And it's also a bit of a deliberate intent to be colloquial in a book title, right? You know, it's like, it could have been called Reality Pedagogy and Improving Education. Yeah. But I think that the fact that you name it something that is in itself sort of vernacular forces you to be able to see that there's some value in something that is linguistically not the norm and not traditional. The title in many ways encompasses the ideas in the book. Like, for white folks who teach in the hood, yes, it's vernacular, it's dirty, but there's knowledge in this book. I promise you there is. I wouldn't have written it otherwise. You know, it's like, you know, kids in urban communities, but there's knowledge amongst those communities. There's some value of who they are. They're brilliant. So the title in many ways represents the kind of ideology that I hope to bring to this work. And, you know, I knew I was going to get folks who's going to be mad, and I knew I was going to get folks who's going to hate. But again, the stakes are too high. Yeah. You know, the time for us to really revolutionize education is now. And you know, and it's in story and it's in theory, but it is also research based. Like, you know, and academic research doesn't have to be boring. Like when you teach science, it doesn't have to be boring. So, you know, my work is academically grounded. You know, I'm a professor in an Ivy League institution. You know, you want to check my credentials, I got more degrees than most people who off the planet. But my brilliance lies not in the credentials, or the brilliance of the work doesn't lie in the credentials. It lies in the passion I bring to this work. And that brilliance is something that all educators who go into the hood have, but cannot allow to come forth because of these rules of where you are. So let's just get past the rules and get to the core, activate your brilliance as an educator, and then do right by young people.
Yeah, and I think you touch on so much that's right. And so when I see that, let me say this to my audience: if you're disturbed by the term white folks, then you definitely need to read the book. Especially if you're going to touch children that do not look like you. Because in education, in the 15 years that I've been in schools, I have seen young white teachers come into urban environments and be great, know the content. Right. They can't get past the first 90 days with the kids. It's a culture shock for them. It's not so much as a culture shock for the kids, but it's a culture shock. And you telling a young teacher who's 22, who's in the classroom to just get through it, that's not good enough. We have to have some real research and some real conversations. And our kids will thank us for that. I think back to when I taught in Atlanta, I had a coworker who is a white gentleman, and he is an attorney. And he decided that after he was going to be an attorney, he wanted to teach because he just was tired of locking kids up. He said, let me try to see if I can help them. And the kids loved him. He was about 45, maybe 50, and the kids loved him. And It wasn't because if for everything on paper, you would have thought they would have just pushed back. But they loved that he connected with them on a real, almost like a fatherly. It was almost fatherly for the kids. When they were in trouble with the law, they called him. You know, he had no issues. So I say that to say we have to have these conversations, and we have to stop. It's what's, like you said, it's what's best for our kids. And right now our kids are suffering. So that leads me to my second question.
Yeah.
Tell me, you write the book, it's coming out, you know, you've been doing the Hip Hop Ed Twitter chat. What do you think? How do I say this? No, let me just say it. What is the teacher who needs this book? It's March. What do you think their year has been like? What has been happening in their class? What are some of the problems that you see that after you wrote the book, you said, yeah, right there, that they need that book? Or, you know, like.
Listen, so I think the book is for that one teacher who is in their first through third year, who is like, you know what, I'm not going to give up on these kids. I'm not going to quit. But they go home every day banging their head against the wall saying, what am I doing wrong? It's for that person. It's for that teacher who is completely comfortable going to urban schools year after year. You're about 15 years in, 16 years in, 20 years in, and there's no joy or magic in your classroom. And you're wondering why. And then you end up being apathetic. It's just your job now. It's for you to just recreate that magic. It's for the person of color who thinks just because they're a person of color, they got a license to just do whatever they want and end up being a warden. You know, you ever go into a school where you got that one teacher of color who all of a sudden is the dean of discipline, and you want to, or formally or informally, it's for that person to realize, wait, maybe my role in the classroom is not to be the person who's enforcing discipline and zero tolerance policies on young people just because I'm a person of color. It's for that person. It's for the school administrator who wants to create a school community where people are upfront about the things that get in the way so that they can move the agenda forward for all their kids. It's for the school principal. The book is for parents who's like, man, that teacher is struggling. My child is not learning. This mother need a book to figure out how to do this thing better. It's for that teacher to go give to that parent. You know, it's for any stakeholder in education who understands that the system as it exists is not working. And it's not empowering young people. And, you know, oftentimes people say, well, you know, so, Emdin, you one of those anti-standardized test guys. And I'm like, well, kind of, sort of, yeah. But I also say this, if your intent is to hold on to the standardized exam at the end of the year to say, what are these kids meeting these benchmarks? They're not gonna meet those benchmarks doing things the way they've been done. So part of the approach is iron out here for us to be able to help them to be able to meet the established benchmarks through a different approach. So, again, writing it, I went to amazing educators that I've met and had conversations with who happen to be white and their struggles. I went to my research. There are faces of people that I see as I'm writing this book. You know, like I'm literally seeing them and saying, "Oh, this is for you, and this is for you." And the intent is that the book reaches those people if they're able to pick it up, so they can enjoy the work. This part, but time out. Part of this is also for you to enjoy this work. You know what I mean? Like, why go teach if you're not passionate about it? Why do the work if you can't have joy about it? Like, you know, I feel like what I iron out in that book is these pathways towards enjoying your craft. And so that's what the book is for. You know?
And you know, one of the things that, okay, so you hit so much, but let's first talk about, this is a silent, it's even a bigger elephant in the room. All because you're a person of color does not mean that you are the disciplinarian at a school.
Well,
I've seen it happen so many times where, you know, the teacher of color, the black teacher, the Hispanic teacher, they all of a sudden have to deal with all the kids and the behavior because this administration or other teachers feel like they have a connection with them. So that right there is just like, no one talks about that. No one talks about
that right now. I'm hopefully it'll be done in a week or so because it's a phenomenon that I've just witnessed all across this country, right? Yeah. Either formally or informally, relegating educators of color to be the person who's managing behavior or dealing with problem children. Nah, fam, I didn't come to deal with problem children because one, I don't see children as problem, and two, I came here to teach. So respect me as an educator. And again, look, I just want to get the work done, man. I don't know how else I can say it. I just want to do the work. I want to be able to give folks, you know, some spark to be able to do it differently. I don't ever claim to have all the answers. Anybody who said they got all the answers is a liar. I say that every time I give a speech. You're a liar if you say you got all the answers. But I do have research-based, experience-based, narrative-based, historical-based approaches to transforming urban education that we should look at because we've not used them before in a concerted way, in the way I've sort of packaged it to really affect the lives of young people.
Yeah, and I think that's so important because you're going to get teachers who are going to say, well, you're talking about, you know, a deficit. This isn't we just had this conversation with me and some of the writers of the Educators Room where, you know, at some point we as teachers have to take back the profession, right? We have to take back and we have to say, you know, we're the experts, but on that, there's also a caveat to that. If you know that you're struggling with something, we have to figure out some ways to make ourselves better. So as a professional, Doctors go to conferences, right? And they learn different things. They talk to colleagues. They say, you know what? I didn't think about that. Maybe I'll try this. What did you do with this? As teachers, so many times we want people to believe we have all the answers and that, you know, I'm going to do it my way. And if they don't get it my way, that's it.
Yep.
So I want you to address the teachers who are going to say, well, you're talking about teachers from a deficit standpoint, and you're not treating us as professionals when we talk about when you talk about the need for teachers to understand educating children in the hood. Because people say the world, because people say the world is not the hood. That's what they'll say. The world is not the hood. Kids are going to have to assimilate. So talk to us about that.
You know, the first thing I'll say is the world is not the hood, but the hood is the student's world. And you have to begin with their world to be able to get them to be able to get to wherever it is that you want them to go. That's first and foremost. And second of all, you know, when folks say, you know, you're not treating teachers like professionals, I say that's the exact opposite. I write this book because I believe you're a professional. When you go into the classroom and you're enacting practices that are wrong by young people and doing it every single day, that's deprofessionalization. You know, you're not a professional if you just go in there and just follow scripts and you become a cog in a machine of oppression. You're a professional when you're critiqued, when you're challenged, when you improve your practice, when you read new ideas, you implement them, and you create them differently. That's what makes you a professional. To be critiqued or to be informed about your practice can either be somebody dousing you and dousing your flame, or it could be inspiration for you to make that flame bigger and better and brighter. And I hope to do the latter. In the book, I write about techniques of having youth critique the instructor on how to be better as a teacher. You know, those are the kind of models I'm asking for, and it actually is professional, and it is treating you like an expert. And I make the argument that if people just left you alone and said, just keep doing what you're doing, you're just fine, you don't have to get any better, just keep doing it, you're struggling, just struggle through it. That's not treating you like a professional, because it's treating you like you are a cog in a machine, and you're just a thing that's there. No, you're a living being. You're a breathing, you are a teacher. You know, I can't say this enough. Like, I write this book because of my passion for the craft and the art of teaching. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's magic in being a teacher.
Yeah.
There's magic in being able to be at the helm of a classroom and to be able to generate a magic that allows kids to be able to just reach heights that they've never reached before. There's a technique to that. On my TED Talk, teach teachers how to create magic. It's like, yo, there's a magic to it. But you gotta know the magic tricks, my dude. If you don't know the magic tricks, you're just a guy in a funny suit trying to make something happen. You gotta be able to know how to make it happen. And so you know, I say, you know, anyone who knows me knows, anybody who's spoken with me knows, anybody who's read my work knows that I have the utmost and ultimate respect for the educator. That's why, as a college professor, I make it my point to educate and be in classrooms every single week, because that's what makes me a better professor, is to be able to be in there, doing the work, knowing the slang, knowing what's going on, knowing how the kids are feeling. So it's the exact opposite. Don't let anybody convince you otherwise. I know there's cats out there who mad at me. I know that. And they hate it. I understand that too. You know, and I understand why also. I understand why that kind of harsh critique that comes. Because people are so comfortable with complacency and comfortable with doing things the exact same old way. Or they're comfortable with folks telling you, getting you all emotional. Oh, schools are bad. Schools are so screwed up. Oh, educators are struggling. It's so hard on the teacher, and not offer you no way to make it better. Well, I'm not those dudes. So if you're looking for that kind of cat, then don't come to me. In fact, my book is out, but if you're looking for somebody to just tell you how bad it is and make you feel better, don't buy my book. But if you're looking for a way forward, if you're looking for inspiration, if you're looking for actual stories that are research-based, and that respects the art and craft of teaching, then buy it, please. And then not only just buy it, talk to me. Like, I'm on Twitter every Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern with Hip Hop Ed, #HipHopEd, at Chris Emdin. You holla at me. I'm about this work. My life is committed to this work. I couldn't breathe if I couldn't do this work. So This is not a sidebar or a side hustle for the professor. This is my life. Is changing this world, changing this game through education. And so I talk about white folks who teach in the hood because y'all on my team. And you know, you can't be on the team with me and I'm seeing you and you can't shoot, because that means I'm gonna lose the game. So if I gotta teach you how to work on your stance and hit that jump shot, then I'm gonna do that. And that's what this book serves as.
And I get, and I love your enthusiasm. I feel like when I started this room, it was because I felt like Teachers don't claim your expertise. You know, we'll say, oh, I think I'm good in this. I think I'm good in that. You said, look, I have the answers for urban education. I might not have them all, but I have them. And if you use these techniques, you're going to be able to increase the culture in your classroom. You're going to be able to have kids connect with you. And more importantly, you're going to be able to teach. So, you know, always, I think we're in education, we have a couple of factions of teachers who say, you know, one side says, leave me alone. I'm going to teach what I want to teach. You have the other side who says, hey, I need help. Tell me what you know. Give it to me. Give me all. I'm going to go on Twitter chats. I'm going to go to conferences. We have people in the middle who are saying, I don't know if teaching's for me. I like it, but I don't really make enough to do it. And then you have some people who say, well, I'm just doing it for a public service. My public service is teaching the kids, so I'm just going to take whatever is given to me, and I'm not going to complain. I'm going to make it work, and I'm going to try to do 30 and retire. But I say that we need to, as teachers, really figure out what our craft is and impart that knowledge to other teachers. So what you're doing is one of those, it's groundbreaking, because for so many times people will write books about teaching and they don't do the work that's associated with it.
That's right.
They'll do the opposite of the work. And so I'm really excited to see you write this book, have the book be, it's a great read, and just be so accessible to other teachers who will say, hey, I want to get the book, but how should I do this? So I'm with you. I say, look, you need to be in schools across America giving some in-services on this, because this is a real issue. Now, I want to talk real quick about, because anybody who knows me, I detest zero tolerance. Oh my God. When I taught in Memphis and even in Atlanta, I noticed there were schools, and I'm not going to say their names, but there were schools who basically, you know, kids earn the right to talk. Kids earn the right to have a seat. Kids earn the right to, you know, be educated. Like, it was just zero tolerance for our kids. And I almost felt like, you know, we don't think of them as humans, because you can't go to an affluent neighborhood and tell a group of kids, no, you can't have a desk till you earned it. No, you can't do this. Or no, you don't get a book until you prove to me that you need a book. You know, it's just these things. So I want you to talk about what you've seen, how your book addresses it, because and I'm not just saying white educators. I've seen educators that look like me.
Like I said,
saying, you know, telling the kids have to earn a right to a desk. Are you serious?
Right. I think you know, it's a criminalization of existence. It's a societal sort of like societal effort to sort of destroy and kill Black joy. It's not understanding versions of the expressions of self that you are robbing kids of by your rules. And all those things, the zero tolerance, or earn your right to this and earn your right to that, that's birthed out of a system that just doesn't see the person as having value. If you see somebody as having value and you see them like you see yourself as a human being, then you wouldn't even think about that as an approach. Let's not even start talking about the fact that having those kind of structures, in essence, prepares them for being seen and treated as a criminal, thereby ushering them into the criminal justice system. I mean, that's a whole other conversation for a whole other time. We can talk about that all year long. But when teachers understand how the practices that they don't know what the root of them are plays out and impacts the lives of young people, that's the crazy stuff. And so what I try to do in a book is like, listen, I try to break down where all this comes from. I mean, I talk about the Carlisle School in the 1800s and the intention of that school and how that is related to the structure of the urban school in 2016. You know what I'm saying? I talk about Invisible Man, you know, a book that was written decades ago, but whose narrative describes the experiences of young people of color in schools today. So my whole thing is I want to make visible to teachers how they are part of a system through the enforcement of zero tolerance policies that does violence on the souls and spirits and the learning of young people. So what I try to do is just make those things visible. If they become visible, and then I tell you a way forward, and then you say, I'm going where I'm at, then that's on you. But at the very least, I have to be able to make clear, make plain what the structures are and how we become complicit in these processes. And this is particularly the case for white educators who are well-intentioned, because well-intentioned become the mask or the cloak that hides our being part and parcel of a system that does violence on young people. So when we can get past our good intention to say, beyond my good intentions, how do I enact good teaching? That's the question. how can I go beyond my good intentions to be a good educator? Once you can address that thing, then you can move forward. And so what I try to do in a book is I try to make that clear.
Mm-hmm. And it's very important because I have 4 kids myself. So I have a teenager, I have 2 elementary school, and I have a baby. And whenever I go into their schools, I'm always looking at that because many times, especially new teachers, they're not aware. We have some teachers who are very aware of what they do and why they do certain things. But then there are teachers who just aren't aware. They're not aware that when you are doing test prep with kids, you're not preparing them for the real world. You're basically just telling them their life is geared towards a test or some final thing. And so I'm always intentional on that. What are your thoughts about? I know in New York City, you guys have some initiatives around educating young Black males, Hispanic young Black males, right? For the teacher out there who's struggling, it's March 27th. They're struggling. Let's say they happen to be white, or they might look like me, and they're struggling to get their kids to connect. And they're saying, you know what? I don't know what to do. I've tried to, put hip hop in the classroom and it's failed. What do I do? What do you tell that teacher? Because I feel like your book addresses it, but just for people who haven't gotten your book yet, what would you tell them starting tomorrow? What are some things they can do to engage those students?
Yeah, the first thing I would say, and it's one of the C's. And so if the book has all the chapters start with a C, and initially there were 3 C's and 5 C's and 7 C's, and the whole damn book is full of C's. But out of the C's, the one thread that cuts across all of them, and it's specifically one of the C's, is co-generative dialogue. I really feel like that's the anchor of it all. I mean, if you really want to be a better and more effective educator, you've got to create a system where you can engage in conversations with young people so they can tell you about your teaching and they can work with you to address one thing at a time to be better. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to be a better teacher. It's not saying you're going to do this on Monday and then on Tuesday you're going to be a superstar. It is, though, that you enact this kind of dialogue on Monday and then you know where you are. And not only do you know where you are, the kids offer you the way forward for them.
Yeah.
Ain't nothing more magical than that. And and I write about this specifically in the book. You're not doing this for all 30 of your kids. You're not doing it in front of an auditorium. But there's a method for selecting students. There are particular kids that you choose. There's a structure for how you make it happen. And once you do that, it transforms your whole teaching life. And I can go through the whole entire book and all the suggestions, but that's one sort of major one. That's a really simple, deliberate way forward. And throughout the book, what I try to do is like the suggestions I lay out in the book and the recommendations and stuff. I'm not asking you. You ain't gotta go get no grant. You ain't gotta go to Donors Choose. You ain't gotta go to Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I'm talking about some things that you could just do. You know what I mean? Like that it just requires you and your students and you having the right mindset to be able to do. And they are as practical and tangible as a dialogue. And having kids teach with you. But ways to do that, because you can't just say co-teach. That there's a method to it. In the words of there's levels to this. You know what I mean? Like so there's the process, and I try to iron those out.
Yeah, and I think that's important because I can remember when I was in the classroom. I'm an instructional coach now, but I would have the kids do a survey on me. So every 3 months you do a survey, and it's anonymous, and I would tell them you can't hurt my feelings, so you just tell me what I need to do to get better. Beautiful. And I can remember, you always have that one kid in the class that's like the leader. The kids respect them. So you go to them if you need something. It's almost, and people laugh when I say this, but it's almost like you're going to the Godfather, right? Yeah. The kid that has all the juice in the school. Yeah. I remember one time my iPad got stolen. And, kids the no snitching is real. So they're no snitching. And I remember one of my kids, he was one of the godfathers of the school. I was like, hey, can you tell me what happened to my iPad? Mm-hmm. He not only found out, he got it back. And he was no. But it's one of those things you create those relationships with your kids that they feel like, I'm not going to let anybody else do anything wrong to you because I know you have my back. So I didn't even have to, I can remember the police saying, do you want to take the little boy to court? I said, no, I don't need to. I just need my iPad back. And the kids were like, look, the boy went to his apartment, I got it back. I was just like, okay, I can do this. But
here's the thing that's beautiful about that folks don't understand. One, that is teaching. But two, there are things you can do to create that kind of environment in your classroom, no matter who you are. And so for me, it's like, yo, like that. So some people be like, wow, she did that. Wow, Black teachers was having good. It ain't even about that. It's about there are certain things that you were able to do to create the scenario where that relationship existed and you knew where to go. And so for me, it's like, listen, I don't care if you white or you Black or you whatever. I mean, I do care because I'm not dismissing it because that's a thing, but it's saying that despite that, there are strategies to implement to allow you to be able to have that kind of relationship where you can go to the kid who got the juice. You know what I mean? You go to the school OG and figure it out. And if you don't know the language, and if you don't even know that that kind of structure exists, man, you losing. Imagine if you didn't even know that that was a thing you could do. So now you're sitting here crying because your iPad lost. Talking about you gonna quit teaching because the kids robbed you, right? Or if you knew that this is a way, there was another way to be able to go about that. There are teachers living two different lives. There's a teacher living the life that you're living, who can get it done. There's a teacher who's sitting there with a kind heart, good intentions, lovely person, who can't never get their iPad back and gonna keep getting robbed. Like, and so there's things to understand, and there are methods to be able to get that done. And you're not gonna get that in the education program, but it's a necessary part of this work, you know?
Yeah, it is. And it's what they don't talk about in teacher preparation.
Right.
You know, they don't tell you those things. And so teachers come in thinking, oh, the kids would never do that. Yes, they would. And they'll take it to another level if allowed to. Let me ask you this, because I always have this argument with some of our writers, with people on the page, like, because the first excuse that I find in urban education is that, well, the parents don't care. If my parents were more involved. And I always say, you know, it would be lovely if we could get all the parents to do what they were supposed to do. But we have to do it with the mindset that the parents aren't. So what do you say to those educators who are saying, yeah, his ideas are great, but I can't get one parent to show up to a parent-teacher conference night? What do you say to that?
Depending on our vantage point, there's always somebody else to blame. And so my response is twofold. One, I don't need name person to make magic in my classroom. I really don't. I can make that magic happen. Two, most of the parents in urban spaces who don't respond to coming into school, you got to understand, these are folks who went through the same school system, who got the same negative experiences, who don't want to be there because they themselves are undergoing some trauma about that school building. And they're forced to send their child there because they ain't got no other option. When you realize the deep psychological nature of parental disinterest in particular neighborhoods, you can't be so glib about saying, oh, the parents don't want to come. And so here's what's crazy about it is that if you create magic in the classroom and a young person goes home and shares some sprinkling of the magic that's been created, the parents are curious about what happened and they want to be there as well. They want to get a feel for it as well. They want to be able to undo the damage that schools did to them. And that happens through a teacher that creates magic in their classroom. So I've been in schools and I've taught where I get like 3 parents. I'm like, man, this is the worst. And then I got to check myself because if my class was popping, the parents will come. If the parent teachers night is geared from the beginning of the year, like it was last year and the year before that, to be finally your chance to tell all these parents off about how bad these kids are, and the parents know that, they're not going to come. So if the nature of the exchange within those spaces is different, if the magic is created in the classroom is different, you're going to get parents coming. And you know, so, and of course the parental stuff is nuanced also, right? We talk about the challenges of socioeconomics within urban communities. That adds another layer to it. But I'm telling you, if your class is popping and the class is magical and the kid is doing well and the kid is bragging about how well they're doing and they're bragging about their teacher, their parents want to come in and meet you, right? It's about how the context has been created that actually alienates the parents.
Yeah. And I think that's so true because I can remember my first 2 years of teaching and the parent conference nights were very negative, you know, like, and I remember just having that moment with myself saying, would I want to come to a school if all I'm going to hear is negativity?
That's
and
right.
Most likely they've heard negativity about this child since the child was in kindergarten.
That's
so it's
right.
like, it's like they come, it's like, okay, what are you going to tell me today? Right. And I can remember, you know, when I made that turn and I started to call my kids who gave me the most trouble, I wouldn't call with what was wrong because they know that Johnny has cursed everybody out. Right. They know that, you know, I'm going to let the ISS person do that. Right. I would call, hey, he read today in class and he's getting much better. And parents would just, it would be like a pause, like, my child?
Right.
Yeah. And it would start that relationship. So then when I did have to call them, I would say, they would be like, oh yeah, and they would get on. I'm like, boy, don't act up in that lady's class. She
Because
don't
you
want
knew she was calling and talk about how good you were doing, don't mess that up. That's right.
Yeah,
and virtual hug through the computer. And because that's the work, sis. That's the work. And people could say whatever they want, man. They could critique wherever way they feel. They could say whatever they want about my book title. They might say whatever they want. Whatever you can say whatever you want. I'm telling you that if you want to be great at this thing, that you need a formula.
Yeah.
You need narratives to inspire. You need narratives so you know how to do it right or wrong. That story you just told, somebody got to hear that. And if they're not hearing it or hearing how to do it, they're losing at this game. And I think that's what the magic is all about, is those things that certain teachers know. You want to be able to bring them all together into a palatable, easily digestible way, wrapping it around in history and story and research, and say, here, now go make magic happen.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't want to keep up any more of your time, but I got 2 questions. Can I ask you 2 more questions?
Of course. Okay.
First thing, I want you to talk about hip hop ed, because I feel like this is the baby of that. So I need you to tell educators why, even if you don't like hip hop, why you need to hop on Twitter and you need to be a part of this. And then I want you to let us go with the hip hop song that your book embodies.
Wow. Both 2 amazing questions. Thank you for them. Well, as I mentioned earlier, Hip Hop Ed is hashtag HIPHOPED. We've been in existence for about 6 years now. Every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. We have not missed a Tuesday in 6 years. Let me tell you. That's right.
Wow.
Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern in 6 years. And it's just a convergence of parents, students. We got high school students who hop on our chat, community members, college professors, teachers, and an occasional celebrity, and just get on Twitter and we have a conversation about, it's not about hip hop music and education. It's about the hip hop generation and their needs in education. And so we'll have chats from everything from, let's say every kid in your school is watching the BET Awards. We're going to have a Twitter chat about how you bring the BET Award into your classroom. Let's say Drake and Meek Mill are having a battle. We're going to talk about Drake and Meek Mill so you know what's going on, how you can incorporate that into competition or battles or dialogue or argumentation in your classroom. Whether it's Black History Month, we're going to talk about how do we transform Black History Month to get young people engaged. So every week we come up with a timely, relevant, engaging topic so that you can take that conversation on Tuesday and do something amazing on Wednesday. And it's part of this new age of professional development where you have access to everybody and they share with you how to be better. And again, it's education for the hip hop generation. Every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. And then, in between, people will just share ideas and thoughts. On occasion, somebody gonna use hip hop ed trying to sell their mixtape. It happens. but what we are is a resource and clearinghouse to be able to share ideas about how to make education better for young people who are from the hip hop generation. And the last question, man, what song?
Yeah. Now, okay, I'm gonna say this. I'm an '80s baby, so I'm all cute.
Yeah,
my song just died, so I'm expecting you guys on Tuesday night to give us,
Well, we mix it up. We do old school, new school, everything, and we do it all. If I was to think about one song that embodies my book right now, it would be from Kendrick Lamar, and it would be "We Gonna Be All Right." That song is so beautiful and magical. Kendrick came with me and one of my graduate students, Brian Mooney. Shout out to @BMoons on Twitter, to a high school in New Jersey, and so I just fell in love with him all over again when he did that. And it would be "We Gonna Be All Right," because that song, you listen to it, he's saying all these things that can go wrong. Money get low and I'm effed up and you effed up, but you know what? We're gonna be all right. And I truly and firmly believe that as educators, if we go back to the core and the essence of what drives us to this work, and we have the right agenda and the right formula for moving forward, we're gonna be all right. And our young people are gonna be all right. It's not a tale of doom and gloom. It's a tale about how we're gonna overcome the structures of traditional education as it stands today and be better and be all right in the future.
So tell everybody how they can find you. They already know about the Hip Hop Ed hashtag, But if you guys, well, let me first say this. If you're planning your professional development this summer, you teach in an urban environment, whether it's K through 12, please think about getting this book for your teachers, having professional learning on this book, and then bringing Chris to your school, because I really feel like it's important for us to have other teachers teach us.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear from a consultant who has just heard of some ideas and they're going to bring, I want to know the person who's been in the trenches with us. So I want you guys to reach out to him, schedule him for some professional learning, and about having some real conversations, because guys, if we really want to help our students who are some of our most needy students, we have to stop being afraid of discussing race.
That's
and come to the conclusion that yes, we're different, but I can use that to my advantage and have some conversations that'll make my kids know that I care about them. So tell them how to get a hold of you.
First of all, just thank you for that. I really appreciate it. You can find me on Twitter at Chris Emdin. That's at CHRISEMDIN. My website, if you want to get in contact with me and you want to reach out, have me come out to your schools or whatever else it is www.chrisemdin.com. You know, I'm on Facebook and the gram and all that kind of stuff too. I'm just around, man. Like, my work and my world revolves around education. I found my life's work. I'm so lucky. And so I swim and breathe in it every single day, and so reach out to me via Twitter, on the website. Let's continue the conversation. Please pick up the book, share it with a teacher, share it with a community. And if you reading the book and you're like, man, I don't like what you're saying here, or what do you think there, or elaborate here, I'll let me on Twitter. We'll have a conversation about it. It doesn't end with the purchase of the book. You buy my book, we partners for life. And then we'll just keep doing this work together. Thank you so much for having me. I love the Educators Room, what you guys are doing. I love the community. I saw you guys sort of partnered up with Educolor, which I think is beautiful also. So shout out to Educolor, shout out to Hip Hop Ed, shout out to my brother Tim Jones, shout out to Emil Cook, Ian Levy, and Imagine Pong, all my people out there. And I just want to thank you again for just creating this platform and for having me on here.
We're going to stop. Me and Chris are going to. Okay, we appreciate you. The work is needed. So guys, in the show notes, you're going to get a link on how to order his book. You're going to get a link to where you can find him on the internet, and just take a second, get the book, and then let's have some conversations. I thought it was and I thought that it was much needed in America. For a second, I have a question to ask you, and thanks guys to tune into us next week as we discuss how you can use Google Drive